Hello, Mr. Pollack. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're here today?
Okay, before I moved to New York to pursue a painting career, I was born in 1912 in Wyoming with 4 older brothers. My mom was a homemaker, but my dad worked as a land surveyor for the U.S. government, which caused us to relocate frequently as a child. Moving around a lot made me feel really distant from my family, especially my father, just because he was so focused on work over our family.
Did you and your family spend a lot of quality time together?
Yeah, sometimes our parents got my brothers and I all very interested in Native American culture. So sometimes we would go to Native American art shows or rituals, but we didn't get to experience that too often because of our financial situation. We had to make sacrifices during the Great Depression.
I see. So how did you deal with the Great Depression personally?
Painting was definitely a release for me, but I drank, of course. That was the only way to deal with it.
You drank. Okay, so how much do you drink compared to then, compared to now?
Well, I drink every day, actually, which is why I came in to see you. My alcoholism was very bad about 15 years ago, so I started to see Dr. Joseph Henderson, who specializes in Jungian psychotherapy. He encouraged me to exert my energies towards art and painting versus drinking, and after seeing him for 4 years, I definitely felt better, but recently feel dependent on alcohol again.
Well, thank you for being honest. It seems like we have some deep issues to work through here. We can tackle your alcoholism through finding the passions in your life. How happy does painting make you?
Well, I feel like I do find other passions in my life. Besides painting, I'm married to my lovely wife, Lee. But painting is definitely my biggest passion in life, but it's also a struggle. My friends and family judge my painting, as do critics. I painted this just last month, if you'd like to see. I don't like to title my painting, so this is simply called number 11.
This is beautiful. Can you explain the whole artistic process here?
It's a very large painting. I laid the entire canvas down on the floor and literally walked back and forth, dripping the paint all over it. My goal was to express my feelings and emotions versus creating a representational figure.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with me, Mr. Pollack. It really seems like we're struggling with a lot of bipolar disorder type 2 here, as well as with some symptoms of depressive personality disorder. It looks like that through a lot of your mania from the bipolar disorder really throws itself into your artwork, and your depressive symptoms really lead to your alcoholism, which we can work on. It was great that you worked with Dr. Joseph Henderson with the Jungian psychology and the psychological process of individuation, providing that sense of wellness and wholeness. So, thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Alright, Mrs. Cole, why did you come into my office today?
I'm just feeling really stressed out because of my relationship with my husband. Because, I feel like I'm so stressed, and I feel like it's affecting my social life and my work.
Okay, well that seems serious. What exactly is the problem?
I just feel like sometimes I really, really love my husband, and then sometimes I really, really hate him.
Okay, can you deliberate on that?
Well, recently, a few years ago, my husband had an affair with my younger sister, right? So, to get back at him, I had an affair with this Japanese artist named Noguchi, and this female artist named Josephine Baker. You know, he just doesn't get me and my personality. I'm the spirit of the Mexican Revolution. I beat polio.
Okay, I can see that you're upset and you have a very dynamic personality. Maybe we can discuss your childhood in more detail?
Well, when I was 6, I had polio, but I beat that. When I was in my teens, I had a bad spinal injury, but I beat that. And when I was 18, I was in a really bad car accident.
Oh, a car accident? What happened?
Well, I was on a bus with the love of my life, Alejandro, and it crashed into a trolley car. And the accident was so bad, I was actually stabbed by an iron handrail through my stomach and into my uterus, so I can no longer have kids.
Okay, well thank you for sharing that with me, Mrs. Call. I appreciate your honesty and your trust. I also understand you brought something into this trip.
Yeah, I brought this painting. I made this a few years ago about the relationship that my husband had with my younger sister. It's called A Few Small Nips. It really compromises what I feel like is happening to me and my life and how I feel right now.
Okay. Okay, Mrs. Oh, well, I think I've come to my psychological conclusion. I believe you suffer from PTSD and borderline personality disorder. The chronic stress you're feeling probably comes from all the medical issues you've dealt with your entire life. But it's obvious to see that you bear a lot of your emotions and trauma in your paintings, which is a very healthy and socially acceptable outlet for your emotions and frustrations. So
Thank you.
keep your head up. Thank you for coming in to see me today.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Dolly. How are you? Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm actually not doing so great, but let's see. About myself, I was born in Figueres, Spain. Before I was born, my parents had another son, which had my same name, who had died 9 months prior to my birth. When I was 5 years old, they took me to his grave and told me that I was his reincarnation.
I see, and how did them doing that make you feel?
It was pretty confusing, considering I was only 5 years old, but throughout my whole childhood, they continued telling me that, so I've come to believe that I am his reincarnation.
How has this belief affected your life and you personally?
Well, I feel like me and my brother are like 2 drops of water with different reflections. Also, in my family, there's a lot of artists, and my mother and father put a lot of pressure on me to do well in my artwork. So I began to attend drawing school, and at the age of 15 had my first exhibition. A year later, my mother died, which was terrible, the most horrific experience of my life, because I worshipped her. Me and her were very, very close. And then after her death, my father remarried to my aunt, her sister.
Wow, so what did you do to cope with this pain?
I threw myself into my artwork. I began to attend the Real Academia de los Bellos Artes de San Fernando. That's where I learned about Cubism and Dadaism, which are still huge influences in my art today.
To my understanding, you no longer study at the academia, correct?
Oh no, they expelled me.
Oh no, what happened?
They accused me of starting a riot, which was completely ridiculous. I think they just wanted any excuse to get rid of me, because they thought my behavior was too irrational, eccentric, and unnecessary.
I see. Well, what did you do after you left the academy?
Well, that was around the time that I created the paranoid critical method. Simply explained, that is the fight between the unconscious and the conscious of the mind. I use it a lot in my artwork.
Could you give me an example in one of your artworks?
An example of that would be my painting The Elephants. It shows 2 elephants whose bodies are being balanced on long, thin, multi-jointed legs. It demonstrates an example of our distortion of reality.
What a great explanation. I believe your art is helping you by providing an outlet for all your emotions.
It has, but at the same time it was very detrimental. My father's relationship with me has completely crumbled due to my influence and involvement with the surrealism. We have a lot of views that he doesn't agree on.
Oh, well thank you, Mr. Dolly, for sharing this information with me. I've come to the conclusion that you have schizotypal personality disorder as well as histrionic disorder. I believe many of your childhood events have brought this onto you and to your artwork itself. So thank you.
Hello, Mr. Magritte. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, before my painting career, I was born in Belgium to my father, whose name is Leopold. He was a tailor and a textile merchant. As for my mother, her name was Regina, but I didn't get to know her very much, for she died when I was the age of 13.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you care to elaborate more about your mother's death?
Well, my mother was a seamstress before she married my father. I remember the days when my father would lock her in the bedroom because anytime she would get loose, she would try and take her life. So I remember that one day, it was March 12th. A few days prior, she went missing, but they finally found her. They found her in the river of Sambre. I remember vividly because when they pulled her out, her dress was covering her face.
So how did you recover from all this?
I took to painting. I went to study at the Royal Academy in Brussels. You know, after a while I found all the teachings very uninspiring, but you know, I still continued to like to paint female nudes, and where I also found my wife. Her name was Georgette, and I love her very dearly.
Did you have any exhibitions for your art?
So I did pick up a new type of art called surrealism. I felt like it was a new type of art that I could make. You know, I first painted the Lost Jockey, which I ultimately put in my first exhibition. I was very excited, but many critics disliked my art. It made me very depressed.
And how did you deal with that depression?
I moved to Paris and met Andre Breton, who was also very interested in the surreal movement, so I put all my focus onto that.
How did you feel about the World War?
I felt very alienated because there was many Germans in Belgium. You know, I started painting a Renard period, which had very colorful aspects, as well as a Wash period, which is very crude style from the violence that was going on in the world.
Would you like to talk about one of your works?
Sure. You know, I painted the treachery of images, which shows a pipe, and underneath it I wrote, "This is not a pipe." I wrote that because it's obviously not a pipe. Just try and fill it with tobacco.
Thank you, Mr. Magritte, for your information today. After reviewing this information, I've come to the conclusion that you suffer from depressive personality disorder and dysthymia. In the back of your mind, your mother's death is the reason for all your surrealist paintings. Thank you for your time.